So we're on the bottom here of Chaf Hey Amid Aleph, about to turn to Chaf Hey Amid Beis. And the Gemara says the following. This is 4 lines up from the bottom of the Amid, and we're talking about Reira. And the Gemara is analyzing 2 different categories of Breira. One is called Tola B'das Atzmo, where he makes the condition depends upon his own actions, less le Breira. Then we hold Ein Breira. And later we're going to see that Tola B'das Acherim, then we do accept Breira. And that's according to Rav Mesharshia. Bisanya, where do we see that Tola B'das Atzmo is less le Breira, is Halokech Yain Mibein HaKusim. So he bought wine from the Kusim, and the Kusim are not reliable as far as Hafrashas Chumos Umaisros. So now if he wants to drink the wine, but he doesn't have what's called Kalim Tahorim, so he wants to pour Trumos and Maisros from this wine into Kalim Tahorim, but he has no access to Kalim Tahorim, and he wants to drink from the wine. So he doesn't want to be mafresh now, because if he goes ahead and he does Hafrasha now, he'll have Trumos and Maisros, and he'll have to keep them in Kalim Tmeim, which he doesn't want to be Mitame Truma, because Truma Tmei is Ton Sreifa. Omer, he can make the following declaration. Shnei Lugim Shani Yosid Lahafrish. I have not yet been mafresh, but in the future I'll be mafresh. Harei Hein Truma, they should be Truma. The Asura and 10 Lugim, additional 10 Lugim, then they should be Masa Rishon for the Levi. Tisha, 9 Lugim that are left over, which is 1/10 of what is left over, should be Masa Sheni. And here we turn to Chaf Hey Amid Beis. Umechel. And now he's going to be Mechal the Masa Sheni when he says, Harei Masa Sheni Zeh, this Masa Sheni, Sheyesh Li Kan, Mechul al Mo Sheyesh Li Bebeisa. So I have moles in my house. I'm being mechal of Masa Sheni onto the moles in my house. V'shosam and he's allowed to drink the wine immediately. In other words, as soon as he was what we call Korei Shem for Truma, Masa Rishon, Masa Sheni, then the yain is no longer tevel. He's allowed to drink the wine, and it's called Chulin Mitu Konim. Now, even though the yayin in the chavis has a mixture of trumas and masros because he was korelem shem, but since afterwards, when he gets access to kalim, then it'll be mafresh the yayin. So therefore, we say that according to Rabbi Meir, the first opinion here is yisbarer hadavar l'mafreya. We apply the principle of breira, and that which he was mafresh now is and he was Korei Shem Truma on it, that will be Chal after he actually finishes drinking what he has to drink. And what he drinks is called Chula Misukanim, and that's called Yesh Breira. Divrei Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Shimon Osrim, they hold that Ein Breira. And therefore, when he's mafresh from the Yayin, Shnei Lugim Truma, the Chafrosh is Chal immediately. And therefore, he can't drink from this wine because he's got a mixture of yain shel truma together with yain shel chulin. So that which he's mafresh later on, 2 lugim in one kli, in a different kli, that's not going to be birul l'mafreya. So we see that according to Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Shimon, ein breira. But that's a case, says Rabbi Mesharshia, of tola b'das atzma. However, Tola B'das Acherim Isle Breira. We're talking about Rabbi Yehuda, and we're going to try to prove that in the case of Tola B'das Acherim, he had a complete das, that whatever the other person decides to do, he's on board with that. And therefore, Yesh Breira, B'Tola B'das Acherim Disnan, we have a Mishnah later on in Masechet Gittin. So now we're talking about a person who's deathly ill. He gave a get to his wife, and he declared, im amus michol. This is your get now if I die from this disease, from this illness. And at the end, he did unfortunately die from this illness. So now we have a brera lemafreya, and this is called Tolav Das Acherim because who's going to decide whether he lives or he dies? It's the Eibishter. So that's called Tolav Das Acherim. And now the get is going to be chal from the time of the Nesina, lemafreya, because otherwise it's ain't get lachar misa. And the Mishnah says, Mahi biosan yomim. What's the status of this woman during the period of time between the Nesina Saget and his death? And here we have machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and the Chacham. Rabbi Yehuda Omar Rei Keishes Ish L'Chol Dvarel, which means that if, for example, her husband is a Kohen, she's allowed to continue to eat truma like an Eshes Kohen. And if she would have an adulterous relationship, she's put to death with chenek. And the Gemara says that let's be medayik. Rabbi Yehuda is only talking about those days between the Nesina Saget and the Misa Sabah. However, he's not saying that the get itself is invalid. In other words, the Tanai that he made is a valid Tanai. However, right, in other words, he's not saying that this is a get lachar misa, therefore it's possible. So it means that Rabbi Yehuda agrees that when it says in the Reisha of that same Mishnah in Gittin, if the Baal makes a declaration at the time that the Nesinas get, and he adds the word me'achshav, that it is a valid get. Ulachi mais, when he dies, havi gita. After his death, the get is chala mafreya. So it's only because he omitted the word me'achshav. But if he had added the word me'achshav, Rabbi Yehuda concedes that the get would be chal limafreya because yesh breira. So we see clearly that Rabbi Yehuda concedes that even though ain breira, but in the case of Tolav B'das Acherim, like for example the Choli, which depends on Shamayim, that's called Tolav B'das Acherim and yesh breira. Now, this is all Rav Mesharshia. Rava says that even Rav Shimon agrees that there's a distinction between Tolav B'das Atzmo and Tolav B'das Acherim as far as Breira is concerned. Normally, Rav Mesharshia Rava, Rabbi Shimon did Tolav B'das Atzmo less Breira, but Tolav B'das Acherim is Breira. So it's not just Rabbi Yehuda who accepts this distinction, but even Rabbi Shimon does as well. Tolav B'das Atzmo, the Leslie Be'er Mihadamor. This was the brisa that we mentioned back on Daf Chav Heyam and Aleph, when a person buys yayin from the kusim and he's mafresh, and he's told B'das Atzmo to clarify and determine which part of the yayin in the chavis is truma. And Rabbi Shimon was on board. He agreed with Rabbi Yehuda that he cannot drink from, he's not allowed to drink from the wine after the afrasha because ain't brera. So that's called Tolav B'das Atzmo, where he himself will be mafresh later on, is less brera. However, Tolav B'das Acherim is brera. I'm going to prove to you from a brisa that Rabbi Shimon accepts brera in the case of Tolav B'das Acherim. This sanya, as we learned in a brisa, Hareini Bolech, a man is Ba'al Isha L'Shem Kiddushin. But he adds a Tanai. Al Menashe Yirtza Ab. Only a father agrees to the Kiddushin. We're going to have a major machlokas here as to whether the Kiddushin is going to be Chal. Afal Pi. According to the first opinion quoted in this price, Shelo Rotza Av, the father objects to the marriage, and therefore the Tanai was not fulfilled, nevertheless Mekudeshes. And why is that? Because we have a principle, Chazaka Einodem Boel, Einodem Osa Bilasa Bilas Nus. And therefore, at the time that he did the Maisa Bia, his kavanah was to have Kiddushin and be Mekadesha without any strings attached. No Tanai whatsoever. So he was Mavato, the original Tanai. And therefore, even if the father objects to the marriage is still Chal. That's the opinion of the Tanakam. Reb Shimon ben Yehuda Omer, Mishum Rabbi Shimon, is Rotza Av Mekudeshes, and Lo Rotza Av Eina Mekudeshes. So Reb Shimon says that when the Kiddush will be Chal, depends upon whether there's kiyum tonight. The father approves of the marriage. And it means that according to Reb Shimon, he made a Tanai, and we have to assume that he's absolutely serious about the Tanai, and he was not mochel on the Tanai.